Okay, we're going to talk about your spinal nerves now. With your spinal nerves, there are four different plexes. The plexi is an intertwining of nerves that therefore then feed one muscle. So we have the cervical plexus, which is located coming from the cervical vertebrae. Your brachial plexus, which will run down your arm. Lumbar plexus from the lumbar vertebrae, and from the sacral will be the sacral plexus. There are a number of nerves in each plexus, 31 nerves total in the spinal nerves. You only need to know a handful. From the cervical plexus, you need to know the phrenic nerve, which will run inside the rib cage, which you can't see in this photo, and control motor to your diaphragm for breathing. Down the brachial plexus, we have 5 different nerves that you have to know. And the top here is the axillary nerve. This is up near the shoulder or armpit, and axilla means armpit. Then there would be the musculocutaneous coming out right here at the surface of the skin, but it's not on this model. And then we have 3 nerves in the forearm. Now remember, your thumb is on the radius side, your pinky is going to be on the ulnar side. So this pink orangey looking nerve is your radial nerve. The one in the middle, the yellow one, is the median nerve. And then there's a dark green one right along the side of the ulna. It's a little difficult to see in this video. Going to the lumbar plexus, we have one large nerve coming out called the femoral nerve. It's going to run right in front of your femur. And then from the sacral plexus, we're going to have your sciatica nerve, which will run down behind the back of your femur. Make sure you can identify whether the picture is anterior or posterior so you can identify the proper nerves. Also on the lab handout, you need to know not only the nerve and the plexus, but you need to know what the job is of each of those nerves. There's a little table for you to study on the handout. The next thing we have to look at is going to be a spinal reflex model. With your spinal reflexes, you're going to have a number of different players. You're going to have, this is the skin area, so along here we're going to have our receptors that will receive the incoming sensory information, and that information will then travel on this yellow sensory neuron to the dorsal side of the spinal cord. You can see the dorsal root ganglia here. Then there's an interneuron, the green one, in between the sensory neuron and then the motor neuron. And your motor neuron will then carry the information out to the effector, the skeletal muscle. Since there are 3 neurons involved in this reflex, 2 places where they synapse, the sensory onto the interneuron onto the motor neuron, is called a polysynaptic reflex. If there was no interneuron and the sensory immediately synapsed onto the motor neuron, it would be considered a monosynaptic reflex. Now on the handout, there are a number of reflexes that you have to understand and know what happens in them. The first is the patellar reflex, which is a stretch reflex when you hit yourself in the knee with that hammer and your muscle stretches and causes your leg to move. We also have basic or intrinsic reflexes compared to acquired or learned reflexes. You have the crossed extensor reflex, which is when you step on a tack and you pick up your foot to relieve the pain. You're going to be using 2 different reflexes in that leg. One is an extensor, one is going to be a flexor of the leg. But also in the other leg, you have to have the extensor respond. So you've got it crossing over from one side of the body to the other. The plantar reflex occurs when you draw the metal object around the bottom of your foot, and it causes your toes to flex and curl in closer. Your corneal reflex is when somebody tries to poke you in the eye and you blink. Gag reflex is when you gag on something. Pupillary reflex, if you shine a light in your eye when you're in the dark and they're accustomed to the dark, the pupil itself will then constrict to decrease the amount of light coming in. Okay. And in the ciliospinal reflex, the final reflex, if you stroke the back of the person's neck near their hairline, their pupils will dilate.